Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am super excited to share with all of you a full face of Pat McGrath using the products from my latest Pat McGrath haul. So Pat McGrath is actually currently having a huge sale on her website. You can get everything on her site 25 to 35% off depending on how much you spend. So if you spend at least $50, you get 25% off. If you spend at least $150, you get 30% off. And if you spend at least $250, you get 35% off. So if you're not going to buy a lot of stuff, I would say you can totally pass on this sale. Pat McGrath frequently has 30% off sales throughout the year. But this sale is unique because I have never seen her give 35% off, and this includes basically everything on her website, including kits that are already discounted. So for me, as a major Pat McGrath fan and collector, I couldn't help myself but pick up a lot of items in this sale. I definitely didn't need these items, and I'm not going to tell you to run out to buy additional things from this sale, but I just want to let you guys know that the sale is happening, and I'm super excited to share with all of you the products that I picked up. So first off, what really drew me to this sale is the Divine Face and Eye Trio, which you can get for as little as $73. So this set comes with 3 items. The Venus and Fleurs Voyeuristic Vixen Luxe Quad. This is the quad that made Patty Alonso cry, so I have been really interested in this palette for a while. You also get a full size of her Divine Glow highlighter in the shade Golden Nectar, and a Divine blush of your choice, and I chose Fleurtatious. So the full price of these 3 items comes to $144, but with the kit discount plus the 35% off, you can get it for $73. So I personally could not pass up that deal. I also picked up her Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Foundation. I feel like this foundation is kind of old news at this point, and I don't hear many people on YouTube talk about it. But I figure since I feature so many Pat McGrath products on my channel, it would be good for me to at least try her foundation and see how it compares with some of the newer releases on the market. And I got this in the shade LM13. I also picked up one of her Permagel Ultra Lip Pencils. This is in the shade Supernatural. Pat McGrath has one of my favorite lip pencil formulas, and so I figured this would be a good chance to pick up an additional shade. Finally, we have the product that I might be the most excited about. So this is the Lunar Nude highlighter that came out for this year's holiday season. And this sale was the first time that this highlighter was also included in one of her site-wide sales. And as you can see, this is just such a beautiful highlighter. Really completely unnecessary. I mean, really the last thing I need in my collection right now is another highlighter. But I was really excited to see this on sale, and so I can't wait to try this out today. So of course, today's video is mostly focusing on these new products from Pat McGrath, but it also just so happened that I got my Refer brushes in the mail yesterday as well. And so Refer right now is having a 50% off site-wide sale. So I picked up 4 additional brushes from them. As you can tell, I haven't taken these brushes out yet or washed them. So today is just going to be a really initial use with them, not actually a review of these brushes. With these in my collection though, I am kind of getting to the point where I have most of the Refer brushes. So at some point I might do a dedicated video to Refer. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that. My general take of the brand is even though I prefer my Wayne Goss and Sonia G brushes, you really can't beat the prices in their concept store. So these brushes, for example, were all around $20 or less. Most of these I got for around $12 each, and so that's really an unbeatable price for Fude brushes. So I do enjoy trying out their brushes, and for me, they're sort of like everyday workhorse brushes that aren't as luxurious as some of my other brushes, but are really amazing for just trying out new shapes, having more brushes on standby, and just in general expanding your Fude collection. So without further ado, let's get into these makeup products. So to start off, let's go in with the Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Foundation. So this comes in this really luxurious black cardboard box with gold detailing. I love how the opening is at an angle, and you can see that the bottle is really nice and snug in the box. So let's just take this out. This is a gorgeous, very luxurious, very, very heavy bottle with a gold plate on the front. As I mentioned, I got this in the shade LM13. I did not get shade matched for this foundation in store because I wasn't really planning on buying this foundation until this sale came around. So we'll see if this shade actually works for me. So let's just take off this cap. You have a nice standard foundation pump in gold. Now let me just pump out one bit. Oh wow, this is a very liquidy foundation. As you guys can see, it's kind of dripping down. So let me quickly grab the Rephr number 17 brush and just dab this into this foundation. This is their smaller foundation brush. So I've been seeing a lot of people recently use their larger foundation brush. And I figured I would hedge my bets by just starting with the small foundation brush and seeing how much I like this. So this formula definitely has some perfume in it. It does fade pretty quickly though. And I meant to apply this to just half of my face so you guys could see the difference, but I went ahead and actually did both of my cheeks. So maybe you guys can see more of the difference now between my forehead and this foundation. I think this is meant to be a light medium to medium coverage foundation. Based on the reviews that I've seen about this, the main critique people have is that folks maybe were expecting a higher coverage foundation from Pat McGrath, just given how full glam a lot of her looks are. So this is more of an everyday foundation in terms of coverage. Looking at it on my skin right now, I will say I think it's a little bit deep for me. We'll have to see how this oxidizes. My skin is definitely the lightest it will probably be though, so hopefully this will work well for me once the weather starts warming up and we're getting a little bit more sun. I am really liking how this is applying with this brush. I'm actually glad that I got the smaller brush because I feel like my face is pretty small, so I think this is actually working pretty well. Let me bring this down my neck a bit because I do think the shade is a little deeper than my neck. It's a good shade match for my hand though. Alrighty, so the light from my windows was getting a little bit strong, so I closed off the windows on the side. So hopefully you guys can see the colors a little bit better. Upon initial application, I would say this foundation is really comfortable, blended out super seamlessly, and is giving me a pretty good amount of coverage with just those two pumps. I also actually really liked using this foundation brush. I feel like it was so easy to blend in and I didn't really see much streaking at all. And any streaks that there were just super easy to blend out with this brush. Also, even though this is the smaller brush, I didn't feel like it took me that much time to blend out the foundation. So upon initial impression, I'm pretty pleased with this Rephr number 17 brush. Next up, let's go in with some Pat McGrath concealer. So I have this in the shade LM10. And to apply it today, I'm going to use the Rephr number 32 brush. This is a really interestingly shaped brush. It's one of those hoof brushes. So hopefully this concealer also just helps with lightening up my skin a little bit because I do think this foundation is a little bit deep for me right now, just given that we're in the dead of winter. So on my forehead, I'm going to blend this out with the foundation brush since this is a larger area. And with the hoof brush, I'm going to go in under the eyes. I think this is a great shape and size for the under eye area. Also going to put some of this concealer on my lids to prime for eyeshadow. This is also a great shape for around the nose and mouth area. Great for precision blending. Alrighty, so here we have the concealer blended out. I would say that if you're in a hurry, probably doing most of the concealer blending with the 17 instead of the 32 would save you a lot of time. So Pat McGrath doesn't have any contouring or bronzing products, so I'm going to go off camera and apply some of my Trestique bronzing stick. Given that Pat McGrath finally gave us blushes this year though, I really hope that she comes out with some bronzing products next year. So here we have some cream bronzer just all over the perimeter of my face and in the hollows of my cheeks. So now let's go in with some setting powder. So I have here the Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Blurring Under Eye Powder in the shade Medium. So I'm going to go in with my Wayne Goss Artist Medium brush to use this both underneath my eyes to set that area, but also I'm going to use this to set my T-zone more generally today. This is one of the products from Pat McGrath that people really rave about the most. In my experience, I will say this is one of the most effective setting powders I've used in terms of really setting your makeup with very, very minimal product. That said, I do find that pairing this with the Pat McGrath concealer can sometimes lead to a little bit too much drying in my under eye area, just because on me, the Pat McGrath concealer is already self-setting enough. So I did just want to mention that in case you have pretty dry under eyes like me, you might want to be a little bit careful when using this powder. Better to pair it with a more hydrating concealer. So now let's get into the blush. So her blushes come in these really pretty lilac boxes with gold trim. The compact itself is in what she calls her black lacquer packaging. This is not a magnetic closure, so there's actually a button here that you push and then you can open up the clasp. I think this packaging overall is really beautiful, but I do wish it was a magnetic closure just because it can be a little bit finicky sometimes to open the clasp. The blush itself has this beautiful rose embossment. And here is a swatch of Fleurtatious, which is described as a soft beige pink demi matte. And here we have some swatch comparisons with the other Divine blushes. So here's Fleurtatious, which is the lightest shade in her collection. And then we have Divine Rose, which is in the same formula, but is more cool toned and mauvey. Then we have Nude Venus, which is in her shimmer formula instead of her demi matte. And this one is more peachy and has some golden shimmer. Then we have Desert Orchid, which is very warm toned in comparison, much more of a caramel and also a shimmer finish. Then we have Love Struck, which is one of her deeper demi mattes and much more cool toned. And then finally we have Paradise Venus, which is her terracotta shade, also much more pigmented and warm toned. So now let's get Fleurtatious on my cheeks. So I have here my Sonia G Cheek Pro. And if you guys watched my blush rankings video, you know that Pat McGrath has one of my all-time favorite blush formulas. Both her shimmer and her demi mattes are just some of my favorite formulas. I find that her formula is just really easy to blend out. The Baked Gelée formula means that even though these are quite pigmented, you can still apply them in pretty sheer layers. And the shade Fleurtatious, which I'm building up to be more pigmented than I would normally go in with blush, just so you guys can see the shade, is actually showing up a lot better on my skin than I thought it would. Since this is the lightest shade in her collection, I was expecting it to possibly not really show up very well on my skin, but this is actually giving me a pretty strong pink flush. On my skin tone, it actually looks a lot like Divine Rose. When I put on Divine Rose, I don't see as much of the mauve and it comes across a little bit more just as a pink. This also is reading pretty pink to me. This might just be because my skin tone is a little bit on the warmer side, so these shades in contrast kind of read very pink. I was expecting a little bit more of kind of a beigey, almost sort of nude shade from this, rather than such a pink flush. The formula though is really nice. This is blending in so easily, so effortlessly. And even though I packed on quite a few layers to get this level of pigmentation, I don't feel like it looks cakey at all. Alrighty, so here is Fleurtatious on both of my cheeks. If you're curious about how any of these other shades look on me, I'll include links in the description box to my previous Divine Blush videos where I provide demos of all of these shades. So now let's get into these highlighters. So I'm going to put one on each cheek for today's video just so we can compare the two. Just to first go over packaging, this is the box that the Divine Glow Golden Nectar highlighter comes in. The packaging of the compact itself is basically the same as her Divine blushes. You have a button that you click and then you can open the clasp. Unfortunately, this highlighter does not come with an embossment, so it's not quite as beautiful as her Divine blushes, but I actually have tried this formula out before in one of the holiday trios that she released, and so I can vouch for this formula. It is really beautiful, really smooth on the skin. And for a highlighter that does give a pretty decent amount of shine, it's relatively flattering on texture. Next, we have the beautiful Holiday highlighter. And let me actually peel off this label. So here we have the gorgeous mirrored, highly reflective gold packaging of the Holiday highlighter. This is gold on all of the sides other than the back. Unlike the previous two products, this is a magnetized enclosure. And more things to peel off inside. And here we have the gorgeous interior for this highlighter. I love how the area around the mirror also has that gold packaging. And this embossment has to be one of the most beautiful embossments I've ever seen. This is also in a baked gelée formula, which I personally love. And here we have some swatch comparisons with her other highlighters. So at the top, we have the Lunar Nude highlighter. This one is actually the most cool toned in Flip. There are some micro glitters in this formula that almost give it an iridescent sheen to it when you look up close. Underneath that, I have the Divine Glow highlighter in Golden Nectar. This one is sort of champagne gold, much more yellow in undertone, and a more smooth finish, so you don't really have any of those micro glitters. Under that, we have Venus Nectar, which is the Divine Glow highlighter in her Galactic Sun trio. This has much more of a peachy undertone to it. Finally, we have her Divine Rose highlighter. This one has more of a dual chrome effect and shifts a little bit from pink to gold. This and Lunar Nude are baked gelée formulas, whereas the Divine Glows are pressed powder formulas. And just to quickly show you guys the packaging for comparison, the Venus Nectar Divine Glow highlighter comes in this Galactic Sun trio. So this is a cardboard packaging for the holiday season. I actually really love this highlight. I think the sort of peachy, almost slightly pink undertone looks really pretty on my skin. I generally prefer that kind of undertone to yellow undertone highlights, but this shade only comes in this trio for now. The Divine Rose highlighter comes in this really fun pink compact. This highlighter has really beautiful packaging and is just a gorgeous highlight in general. This is one of my favorite highlighters since it's pretty much impossible to overdo it with this highlight. You can apply layer after layer and it won't look heavy at all. The Divine Glow highlighters though are better if you want a brighter highlight. So now I'm going to go in with my ABH highlighter brush into this Divine Glow highlight. This picks up a decent amount on the brush, and I'm just gonna sweep this on the right side of my face. Hopefully you guys can see some of that gorgeous shine. You really just need a little bit, and you really don't have to buff this into the skin. It just goes on so smoothly with one swipe. I'm gonna add one more swipe just so we can really see it, but in general, I would probably try to keep this a little bit more subtle. So there we go, really pretty. And I would say actually upon initial impression, this shade is pretty flattering on my skin tone. Next up, let's go in with this beauty. So I have my Artist Small brush from Wayne Goss, and that actually picked up quite a lot with just one dab, but that's okay, we're going for it today. Wow, I hope you guys can see just how beautiful that shine is. That is really impressive. For a baked gelée formula, that picked up really easily. As you can probably tell, this highlight is definitely a little bit more cool toned than this one over here. This one looks a little bit more like a natural glow, whereas this one is definitely a bit more blinding. I would say in terms of texture, the Lunar Nude definitely emphasizes texture a little bit more, in part because it does have those micro glitters, which the Divine Glow does not have. So I think for me, the Divine Glow is probably sort of an everyday highlight that I would go with, but this one is really fun for the holiday season. So with the face done, let's get into the eyeshadow. So this is in the standard packaging for Pat McGrath's quads. It has her hieroglyphic logo on the front, and on the back you have the shade names. The opening is magnetic, and inside you have 4 gorgeous shades. This is described as a flattering warm bronze quartet. And here we have the 4 shades finger swatched. Moonlight Liaison is described as a very warm toned, very light pink with a metallic finish. Wow, look at that shine. Then we have Rose Fire Nectar, a very warm toned medium dual chrome with a sparkle finish. Wow, this might be the most beautiful dual chrome I've seen from Pat McGrath. Then we have After Dusk, a slightly warm toned dark copper with matte finish. And finally, we have Twilight Bronze, a moderately warm-toned, light medium taupe with a metallic finish. So here we have all 4 beautiful shades. That Rose Fire Nectar shade in particular just looks so incredibly beautiful. So since Rose Fire Nectar is the star of this palette, I did want to do some quick comparison swatches with a couple other similar shades from my Pat McGrath palettes. So here's the shade from Voyeuristic Vixen. Then we have VR Nectar from Sublime and VR Pink from Subversive. As you can see, all 3 of these have a pretty similar flaky texture and color story. I would say that the shade in Voyeuristic Vixen is just a little bit more shifty and bronzy. VR Nectar has maybe a little bit more gold than bronze. And VR Pink has more of a cool toned pink undertone rather than a warm rose. So just something to note if you already own Sublime or Subversive. So based on the initial swatches, a couple things I do notice about the formula are that these 2 shades are extremely flaky. So I knew that Rose Fire Nectar would be really flaky, but I thought this would be more in her standard metallic shade. These are definitely very textured though, which I find interesting because usually for a single look, you only want to go in with one super textured shade. So I think in general, when using this quad, I would probably only use one of these 2 instead of both of them. Today, I'm just going to put them on top of concealer because that's what I like to do for my initial impressions of eyeshadows, just to keep everything really consistent. Normally though, I think I would go in with either some mixing liquid or an eye primer. So to start out, let's see how well this matte blends. So I'm going to go in with my Wayne Goss number 16. And see if we can use this as an all-over crease color. One thing I was a little bit worried about with this palette is since there's only one matte, whether I would be able to get the amount of dimension that I usually like in the crease area. Alrighty, upon initial blend, that was actually really easy to use as a transition shade, so I'm glad about that. We'll have to see after this whether we can also build this up, but so far it's doing well in the blending department. So here we just have 2 sheer blended out layers, but let's just go back in with some more and just kind of pad that on the outer third and then lightly blend again. Alrighty, I'm impressed. That was actually really easy to blend out. I'm probably going to add some more of this later as well, but I do really want to first add some shimmers. So with a finger, I'm going to first go into this Rose Fire Nectar because, of course, this is the main shadow I am really excited about in this palette. And let's just sweep this all over the lid. Really try to press it in because I'm expecting some degree of fallout with this shade, which is fine, but just want to mitigate it as much as possible. Okay, yeah, definitely got some fallout there. Clean that up later. Wow, this is a really beautiful shade. Definitely got some gorgeous shine and shift to it. I did get a decent amount of fallout though in applying that shade. This finish reminds me of a sort of more sheer version of the Terra Moon's Chameleon formula. This one did give me a little bit more fallout than that formula though. Now cleaning off my finger, I'm going into this bronze shade and just layering this on the outer portion of the lid. Let's see how this does over here. Oh, actually, I feel like this shade brings in some light, so probably should have done this the other way around, but that's okay. This is also a really pretty shade. A little bit less flaky, which is great, but still a decent amount of bronzy shine. So now let's bring in one of my other brand new Rephr brushes. This is the Rephr number 13, which is their smallest crease brush. And I'm going to dab this into the matte shade and sort of use this to add a little bit of depth and also blend out the outer portion of where the shimmer meets the matte. I do think this is a brush that's going to fluff out a lot more once I wash it. Right now it is a little bit firmly packed. Good for detail work though. This reminds me a lot of my Wayne Goss number 12 brush. In general, the Rephr crease brushes seem extremely similar to some corresponding Wayne Goss brushes. Let me know if you guys would be interested in a Wayne Goss refer comparison video at some point. Alrighty, definitely a lot of shine on that eyelid area. For the lower lash line now, I'm going to go in with the refer number 26. This is the last brush from my latest haul. And I'm going to dip into the matte shade. And then starting in the outer portion of my lid, kind of sweep that inward a little bit. And I might have gone a little smoky there. Probably should have used my tip more. Clean up that outer edge a little bit. I think you do have to be a little bit careful with this brush, not to use just the tip because it's a little bit sharp. So you want to go at a slight angle, but also not too much of an angle because then you'll get a lot more shadow than what you might be looking for. So as I'm doing this look, I would say definitely go in with either some heavy duty primer or mixing liquid because I keep getting a lot of flakes from this formula. And honestly, I can see that on my arm as well. Even though I swatched this and really packed in the swatches, this formula has a tendency to flake up and then the flakes just kind of fall off my arm onto my dress. So that is one aspect I'm not really liking so far about this formulation. So now with the tip of this brush, I'm gonna go in with the lightest shade and just sweep this along the inner third. I think the other two shades are a little flaky, so you want to be careful and probably not use them on the lower lash line without any mixing liquid. And now going in with my Sonia G Mini Booster into that same Moonlight Liaison shade, I'm going to put this on the inner corner and also the brow bone area. And this Moonlight Liaison shade feels a lot like her typical Skin Show shade. So very beautiful, very reliable shade for highlighting. I also love Skin Show shades for cheek highlights, so you could definitely use this as a cheek highlighter as well. So for eyeliner today, I'm going to go in with the Pat McGrath Permagel eyeliner in the shade Black Coffee. Normally, I do not use pencil eyeliners on my upper lash line just because I find they tend to tug, but this one is extremely creamy. So this is one of the few that I'm okay using on my lash line. So I did an initial sweep of the eyeliner on my lash line and in my waterline, but to just smudge it out, I'm going to go back in with the refer number 26, take some of this matte shadow and just pull that over the eyeliner just to make the edges a little bit less harsh. So here we have the final eye look. Overall, I would say I really love this look. It's so gorgeous and really multi-dimensional, even though I only have 4 shades on my eyes. The amount of fallout though was quite the struggle. I mean, if you guys came here right now, you would just see glitter literally everywhere, all over my hands, all over my dress, all over my desk, just everywhere. So I'm definitely never going to apply these flaky shades without either mixing liquid or primer in the future because I feel like they have too much texture to be applied purely dry. And again, even after they're applied, it just seems like the flakes almost repel each other. So they just keep wanting to flake off my arm. Like really anytime I move my arm or slightly touch it, just a lot of flakes come off. And so I am worried that throughout the day, my eyes are just going to be constantly shedding glitter flakes. So do just be wary about that with this palette. If you're looking for a really simple, easy to throw on look, this might not be the best palette from a formulation perspective. So we're almost done with the look, so let's go in now with this new lip pencil. First off though, let's just take a moment to admire how gorgeous this packaging is. I always love the boxes that Pat McGrath products come in. This box just has such a fun pop art vibe. So it has this envelope style enclosure, so let's just unwrap that. Inside you have the lip liner plus this little Pat McGrath pencil sharpener. So here's the shade Supernatural, and the shade is described as a mid-toned warm nude. I also have her lip liner in Structure, which is described as a mid-tone nude. So here is Structure and here is Supernatural. So you can see that while Structure is a little bit more pink, Supernatural is more brownish nude. So let's sweep this around the perimeter of my lips. So here we have Supernatural just around the perimeter of my lips. It's a pretty close shade match to my actual lip color, just a tad bit more brownish. So I think this will add a really nice natural contour to my lips. I love this formula from Pat McGrath. It's so creamy, glides on the lips just so easily. Normally I would go in now with some lipstick, but instead let me go ahead and fill the rest of my lips in with this liner just so you guys can see the shade better. So here's Supernatural all over the lips, and I think now you can see that brownish warmth a little bit more. By itself, the formula is a little bit drying and a tad bit sticky when I press my lips together. So I personally don't like wearing the lip liner just by itself, but it's an excellent base for any other lip products. For today's look, I'm going to go in with my Pat McGrath lip gloss in the shade Bronze Divinity. This is a little bit more of a sheer shimmer formula, so it'll let the lip liner peek through a bit more. So here we have it with the lip gloss on, and Pat McGrath has one of my all-time favorite lip gloss formulas. It's really juicy, really comfortable on the lips, not sticky at all, and actually makes your lips feel really good. And as you can see, this shade in particular didn't really add a lot of pigment to my lips, so you're still seeing a lot of that brownish nude from Supernatural, but it did just add a lot of shine and some shimmer. So here we have the final look, a full face of Pat McGrath products. Overall, I'm really liking this look and really had a great time with this haul. To quickly run through my overall impressions of these new products, I would say that for the foundation, now that I've had it on my skin for a couple hours, it's looking really nice overall. The finish is very skin-like. I'm not seeing any greasiness or dewiness. It's feeling super comfortable so far. As I mentioned earlier, the shade is a little bit deeper than my current winter shade, so I probably should have gotten something a little bit lighter, but I think I'm still able to pull this off once I add the concealer on. I will say if I take a super close look at my forehead and areas where I have some slight wrinkles, it is a little bit less smoothing than my Lisa Eldridge foundation, which has recently been my favorite go-to foundation. That said, that could also be because of the powder. I do find the under eye setting powder from Pat McGrath to be a little bit drying on my skin. So I'm going to have to try out this foundation without powder and with some other powders before I can give you guys a full review about it. This is a really beautiful foundation though, so I am excited to play around more with it. For the Divine Glow highlighter, this is a formula I already knew that I liked, but I'm actually quite impressed with the shade of this highlight. I was not going to run out and get this highlighter by itself since I already have the Venus Nectar highlight, but I do think this sort of champagne-y shade is just a very perfect, everyday, goes with everything type of highlight shade for my skin tone. This holiday highlight is definitely a little bit less everyday friendly, a bit more high shine, a bit more shimmery, but I still think this is a gorgeous shade and formula, and of course the overall packaging just makes it such a luxurious experience. In terms of the blush, Fleurtatious definitely impressed me in terms of the pigmentation. I was not expecting this to show up that much on my skin since I have swatched the shade in store before and found that it didn't really show up super well in swatches. It was really easy though to build it up to pretty significant pigmentation for today's look. I will say I am slightly disappointed that this doesn't look more different than the Divine Rose blush on me. I was hoping this would be a little bit more of an everyday neutral shade on my skin tone instead of being so pink, but it still is a really gorgeous shade. Next, we have the eyeshadow quad, and this one is the one product I have kind of mixed feelings about right now. I think the look that I created is beautiful, and I could definitely see myself recreating this look, and also doing a look that's more centered around this bronze shade. These two formulas over here were super easy to work with, blended out extremely easily on the skin, but I'm just not a huge fan of how flaky these two are. Personally, I like the option of just going in with concealer as primer and not having to worry about that. I will keep playing around with this palette though and try it with different primers and mixing liquid and give you guys my updated impressions in a future video. But at least based on my initial impressions, as beautiful as this palette is, I am not a fan of just how much fallout I've gotten. Finally, we have this lip liner in Supernatural. And overall, I have a great first impression of this product. I already knew that I loved Pat McGrath's lip liners, so the formula is no surprise at all. I do like that this color is a little bit more brown in comparison to Structure, which has more of that pink tone. So I think I'll probably go for this on days when I want a nude lip and have a nude lipstick that is a little bit too light for me. So that's it for my Pat McGrath Black Friday haul. If you guys have shopped this sale, I would love to know what you picked up and how you've been liking the products. I can't wait to continue playing around with these products, so if you're interested in a dedicated video to any of these products or other Pat McGrath products, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I'm hoping that after the holiday season, I'll be able to take some time and do some more in-depth reviews of a lot of these products, since I know a lot of my videos recently have just been huge hauls, given that I can't seem to resist these makeup sales. But I hope you all have also been enjoying the Black Friday sales, and in general that you've been enjoying the start of the holiday season. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!